The Most Expensive House in the Universe, written by ReadWorks. Do you know where the most expensive house in the universe is located? Some might guess Hollywood, where some of the richest and most famous movie stars have their homes. Others might think of New York City, where a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan can cost more than a mansion in the suburbs. But they would all be wrong, because this is a trick question. The most expensive house isn't even properly located on Earth. It's the International Space Station, which is circling in orbit above us right now. The cost to build this engineering marvel, which is roughly the size of a football field, is around $150 billion. Many different governments cooperated in order to plan and build the ISS, including the USA, Russia, Japan, Canada, and Europe. These entities decided to work together on the project only after developing plans independently for related space projects. By combining forces, they reasoned they could split the cost of constructing a space station and also share resources while on board the station. The countries envisioned three important purposes for their joint project: to support scientific research, to help astronauts continue to explore space, and to educate the public. Thus, the engineering criteria for the space station had to include facilities to support each of these important missions. Construction began in 1998 after the countries decided to band together and merge their space missions to create the ISS. Many countries used their spacecraft to deliver the parts for the ISS little by little into space. First came the operating systems and hardware. Then 2 years later, a Russian rocket delivered the living quarters, complete with beds, toilets, and a kitchen, that would make the ISS habitable for humans. The first residents of the ISS, 2 Russian astronauts and 1 American, arrived on Expedition 1 in 2000. Over time, more space missions to the ISS added new parts to the space station, such as docks for incoming spacecraft that would make it easier for astronauts to come in and out of the station. Throughout the construction of the ISS, which is partially solar-powered, engineers had to think constantly about the best way to keep the ISS running. They had to build and position the station's parts so that the space station could be powered by light from the sun. They also had to think about ways to protect it from meteoroids, including installing strong shutters on its 7 windows. They installed robotic arms for the space station that could grab and hold both ships and astronauts securely while docking. And they had to install features that would make it easier to live for long stretches of time in space, such as exercise machines for the astronauts. Astronauts can come and go on the ISS. They come to perform many of the experiments for which the station was designed, involving biology, physics, astronomy, and meteorology. Other test equipment to be used in missions to the Moon and Mars. Others test equipment to be used in missions to the Moon and Mars. In a Japanese-built laboratory aboard the ISS called Kaibo, which means hope, they can even grow plants and raise fish. However, most of the astronauts' space food is still delivered in sealed bags, and there isn't much variety. Thus, the crew aboard the ISS often looks forward to visiting shuttles that bring the astronauts fresh, different fruit to eat. Life aboard the ISS has become relatively more comfortable thanks to technological improvements developed by engineers. However, it has not always been easy for the engineers back home to work on the space station. Space travel and construction of spacecraft are 2 of the most expensive projects a country can take on, and as the economies around the world shift, some countries have a harder time contributing financially. Sometimes engineers from different countries will disagree about the best way to build something, and while some people on the space station project think it's a good idea to charge money to space tourists in order to provide more funds for the project, or to change companies a lot of money to advertise their business on the rocket, or to charge companies a lot of money to advertise their business on the rockets that fly to the ISS, others think that these ideas do not align with the original purpose of the ISS. But the fact is, no country or individual can afford the giant price tag for this important space house alone. They must keep working together, and the results, whether they include important new scientific discoveries, easier and more frequent missions to Mars, or better cultural relations between our countries, are sure to benefit us.